And that's so interesting about happiness, is that it shifts all the time.
Yeah. And how does it relate to personality? Because you did some research about that.
Yeah, well, personality is in many ways related to happiness. And two important ways in which it is related is, first, there are specific traits which we all have, like this big 5 personality domains, for example.
Yeah.
So neuroticism, extroversion, conscientiousness, openness, and agreeableness. These are the traits which you should see as dimensions where we all on, right? So we can be more or less agreeable. And these traits relate to average levels of happiness, or subjective well-being is actually what I should say. So people who are more neurotic on average, so who are more inclined to feel anxious and depressed and I guess that's my smartphone.
That's okay.
Sorry. But they are more easily content with life.
Oh, sorry. Which personality?
Well, for example, people who are lower on neuroticism, so who are more emotionally stable, for example, they often report slightly higher happiness. And people who are a bit more extroverted, for example, and a bit more conscientious. But these are averages. The second way in which personality is related to happiness is that it influences the needs you experience. So people who are very extroverted, for example, which is a dimension which runs from very introverted people, so people who are really busy with their inner worlds and who prefer to be on themselves a lot, versus people who are very extroverted, so who are very much focused on the world around them and who are much focused on social relationships and enjoy conversations a lot. This influences what kind of things you would choose for yourself in order to feel happy. So, for example, if we're talking about Friday evening, which is this evening, so if I'm a very introverted person and I would be thinking about what I would like to do this afternoon, then probably this would be reading a book at home, or perhaps watching a nice Netflix movie with your girlfriend. Whereas I'm a very extroverted person, would like to go to a party, or would like to meet a lot of people somewhere. And these are both examples of great evenings. However, if we place the introverted person at the party and the extroverted person at the couch with a book, then they both don't have this great evening. So personality also influences the kind of things we want in life, which subsequently influences how happy we are.
Yeah, because that's one of the things. I have done a personality test, and I ranked 95 percentile on extroverted. I'm a very extroverted person, and generally speaking, I love talking to people, so that's why I have a podcast probably. But the weird thing is that over the years, I have trained myself to be better at being alone, to a degree where now it takes me a lot of energy to actually be in a group of people. Like I prefer, like I'm very extroverted on one-on-one conversations or with 3 people. But whenever it gets more than 3 people, it is, I don't know, too much almost. And I never really understood, does it have anything to do with the other personality traits? Could it be? Just wondering about like...
It could be. It's also relatively complex in the sense that if you're not really like in groups of people, then a true extrovert would enjoy that a lot.
Exactly.
And we have other characteristics like our need for affiliation. So this means that you enjoy company a lot, and you enjoy like having conversations like we have now, where we're talking about really a topic or something. That's something that really gives you energy. Whereas a truly extroverted individual, and of course this is a bit broad how I approach it here, but this person would really enjoy the party and this interaction with a lot of people, but not necessarily having a conversation with a specific topic which goes on for like an hour or something like we do now about happiness. And I think the best way to really find this out about yourself might not even be a personality questionnaire, although this is what most people use, but once you had a heavy day, for example, you did an exam or you did work which made you exhausted, how are you going to recharge your battery? Are you going tonight to like meet a lot of people and have drinks with your friends.
Yeah.
Is that the way you would recharge, or are you staying at home and having some time for yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that would be the introvert. And the extrovert would meet people to recharge the battery. And I think that's one of the best tests to really.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's really where all my life people have said that I'm very extroverted, and now if you ask me that question, I would definitely say I still stay at home, for sure, and I will watch something on TV, stay in, and very rarely go out of my house. Especially when I'm tired, I would not like to go out of my house and see people and God. That would never I would love to see a friend and to talk with a friend maybe in my house rather in my house than in their house. That's very specific. Something I've noticed is that I don't like leaving my house once I'm tired. I would like to stay in. I would also not read a book because I feel like that would be like too I don't know, boring. So it's like there's the thing where I like to trigger myself a lot. From my favorite thing to do to recharge myself is play a video game, a card game, and watch lectures of you on YouTube at the same time. That's basically
how you would spend your time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when we're thinking about these personality traits, we should not approach them as really static individual characteristics. So it's more the average of a lot of behavior over time.
Yeah.
So if you're an extroverted person, it does not necessarily predict what you will do next hour, but it would predict what you will do all the days over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And of course, how we act upon it changes from moment to moment. So if you're very tired, even the most extroverted person wants to be alone.
Yeah.
And for example, as an introverted person, if I have to teach or if I have to do other things, I act more extroverted than I would normally be in order to make the lecture go well or being part of a group, which is okay for a couple of hours. But the point is, if I would do that for days in a row, then it would really exhaust me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think that one of the things that I figured out is that after I got a girlfriend, I became less social, and I think that can be quite normal because you already have someone around you. But it also I think has to do with the fact that I'm very agreeable, and agreeable people like to be in a relationship, and I feel like that was also probably a combination that makes me feel more extroverted, or push me to be more extroverted in those times when I didn't have a girlfriend.
Yeah, could be. But also,
yeah.
When we're talking about these domains, they're all on itself very broad. So extroversion covers a lot of sub-traits.
Yeah.
And being in social company, extroverted people get more stimulation out of it. So they get more reward for social interaction than people who score lower on extroversion. So they're not necessarily better at it. But if you do it more often, you'll probably get better at it over time. But
the dopamine levels are more triggered by it, basically. It's like, oh, more people, nice. That's basically.
But it's slightly broader than only the social interaction aspects, in the sense that it's also about the energy you have and the focus you have on the outside world. So as a true introvert, I can be really dreamy, so being lost inside my mind, right? And I think an extroverted person would be much more busy with stimulation. Do you like music when you are trying to learn stuff, or do you want it to be quiet? These kind of things.
Yeah.
And all of these personality domains cover a lot of different traits. So different people who score relatively high on extroversion might balance in the sub-traits, which makes them not identical. And of course, all these big traits interact. So a person who's very conscientious or very organized and focused on completing tasks and all these kind of things, very industrious. It's a conscientious extrovert is something very different than someone who is not very conscientious, so a bit sloppy, not so much focused on achieving things. So all these things interact in many ways.
Yeah, that's true, because I am more conscientious, and I see that in a way also. For instance, one of the reasons I don't like to go to parties is because it's always late at night, and I want to get up early in the morning.
I see. So you have different goals in your...
Yeah, so that could also explain why I don't like going to parties. It's not maybe not the people, but maybe it's just that it's like late and I don't want to do all those things. So that's, that's very interesting.
And that's the role of context.
Yeah.
And also, we change a lot in our personality traits when we grow older. So, for example, you previously mentioned like between 18 and somewhere in your 20s, a lot of stuff changed. But most of us, between 20 and 40, we change massively in how our personality is constituted. So we become much more introverted, we become much more conscientious. Often we become much less neurotic, so we become more stable, have more controlled emotions. So we become more dominant often. So the way we operate in the world changes when we grow older. It's not as if when you're an adult, this is it, right? And that also influences the choices you make, the needs you fulfill.
And also how you fulfill your happiness.
Definitely, because it influences how you feel about everything around you, how you think about what is important and what you're doing, the wants you have, so needs, desires. And it not necessarily means that you have to fulfill all these desires, but that you recognize that they are there and that you understand these needs and desires is already